The door was closed. The room was quiet. 3 feet of carpet separated him from a decision that couldn't be taken back. She lifted the gun and didn't blink. This wasn't a robbery. This wasn't a warning. This was personal. He didn't raise his voice, didn't step back. He just watched her the way a man does when he already knows the odds are bad. What happened next would echo through the underworld for decades, not because a woman pulled a trigger, but because of what the man standing in front of her allowed to happen. Before that night, she wasn't a weakness. She was an exception. Gay Orlova didn't arrive in New York looking for protection. She arrived hungry, smart, careful, a dancer who knew how to hold a room without asking permission. Russian accent still sharp around the edges, confidence smoother than the music she moved to. Nightclubs noticed, then better clubs, then rooms where the audience wore tailored suits and didn't clap unless something impressed them. By the mid-30s, she wasn't dancing for noise. She was dancing for power. That's where he saw her, not from a shadow, not surrounded by men, alone, still, watching. He'd already reshaped the city by then. Old bosses gone, new rules written. The kind of man who didn't chase anything because everything eventually came to him. Women included, except this one didn't. Flowers sent backstage came back untouched. No fear, no note begging forgiveness, just a clean rejection. That bothered him more than gunfire ever had, so he returned. Same seat, same posture. Night after night, never spoke, never smiled, letting patience do the work violence usually handled. When she finally approached him, it wasn't flirtation. It was curiosity sharpened into a question. He didn't answer it, he redirected it. That was how it started. Not loud, not reckless. Quiet dinners where nobody used last names. Walks that avoided well-lit streets. Conversations that ended when the sun threatened to make things public. She didn't ask about business. He didn't offer explanations. That silence felt like trust. By the time she moved into his place, nobody needed to be told what she was. The inner circle already knew. She was protected, untouchable, and more dangerous than anyone realized, because trusting her meant something else had been lowered. Across the city, another man was paying attention. Vito Genovese didn't rush. He counted, measured, learned which doors stayed locked and which ones opened at night. Killing the man at the top outright would light fires everywhere. That kind of chaos always comes back around, so he looked for something quieter, something human. That's when Gay Orlova's name reached his ear. He didn't send a killer, he sent a gentleman. A man with clean cuffs, polite timing, and a smile that looked harmless enough to be believed. Someone who didn't smell like the street. Someone who could sit at a cafe table and talk about opportunity instead of blood. The first conversation was innocent. The second felt professional. By the third, the door was cracked. And somewhere between compliments and concern, the idea was planted. Not an accusation, not yet, just a thought. And once that thought took hold, it didn't need force to grow. It only needed time, because when fear is watered carefully, it starts asking its own questions. And soon, someone was going to pay for the answers. The man never rushed her. That was the trick. He didn't arrive with warnings or threats. He arrived with coffee, timing, and the kind of manners that made danger feel reasonable. He spoke about business first. Legitimate words, legitimate numbers, a future where she wasn't dancing for rooms full of men who watched her like property. She listened, carefully. On the 4th meeting, he changed the temperature, not his voice, his subject. He said Charlie's name like it carried weight, not fear. Weight. That's when her shoulders tightened, not because she was guilty, because she understood the rules. In that world, names didn't surface by accident. He told her he was concerned. That people whispered. That men who built empires always collected enemies, and enemies didn't fight fair. They reached sideways, through doors that felt safe. He never said Charlie would hurt her. He let her arrive there herself. Then came the box, small, clean, heavy for its size. He slid it across the table without drama, like a man offering an umbrella before rain. Said it wasn't about violence. It was about options. About a woman not being helpless when men made decisions around her. She hesitated. That mattered. Because if she hadn't, none of this would have worked. She told herself it was temporary, that she'd never use it, that taking it didn't mean believing him, it just meant being prepared. Preparation feels harmless, until it is. After that, the calls began, anonymous, short, always calm, always vague. Stories of women caught in crossfire, of girlfriends who knew too much without knowing anything at all. Headlines left where she'd find them. Accidents that didn't look accidental once you stared long enough. No proof, no direct threats, just pressure. And pressure reshapes truth. The idea that Charlie was different began to feel naive. The tenderness she knew felt like a performance she'd misunderstood. Every quiet moment started sounding like rehearsal. Every silence a plan she wasn't part of. Fear rewrites memory. By the time spring came, sleep stopped helping. Every sound in the apartment felt watched. Every knock on the door felt final. Then the man came back one last time. This time there was no business talk. He told her it was close, that decisions had been made, that once a man at that level decided someone was a liability, the ending was simple. She cried. That surprised him, not because he cared, because it meant he was winning. He didn't tell her to kill Charlie, he told her to survive. That word does terrible things to good people. The night arrived quietly. No sirens, no warnings, just the sound of keys and a familiar voice asking if she was all right. She said yes too fast. That was mistake number one. He went to the bedroom. The water started running. Steam filled the room where secrets were usually kept. She stood alone in the living room with a choice she hadn't admitted to herself yet. Leave and spend the rest of her life being found. Stay and trust a man who might already be planning her ending. The box waited in the closet. She opened it with shaking hands, loaded the rounds exactly the way she'd been shown. Each click felt like a door closing somewhere behind her. The water shut off. Footsteps. She positioned herself where he wouldn't expect, where the angle made sense, where she wouldn't have to think too long. He stepped out relaxed, comfortable, exposed. And when she raised the gun, the world narrowed to 3 feet of space and one question she was terrified to answer. Because once she pulled that trigger, there was no going back. And she was about to find out whether fear had been lying to her or telling the truth. He stopped mid-step, not startled, not angry, just still. The towel hung loose around his waist. Steam curled out behind him like the room itself was holding its breath. His eyes moved from the gun to her face, slow and deliberate, as if he were solving a problem he'd already seen before. "What's this?" he said calmly. Her voice cracked when she answered. Not because she wanted it to, because fear finally had permission to speak. She told him she knew, told him he wasn't getting away with it, told him she wouldn't wait to be erased. He didn't interrupt. That was worse than yelling. He lifted his hands, palms open, a gesture he'd taught other men to fear. Not surrender, control, buying seconds, reading the room. "Who put that in your hand?" he asked. She told him it didn't matter. He took one step closer. She screamed for him to stop. He did. And then he said the name, not accusing, not loud, just precise. Her grip faltered, just enough. That's when she realized this was unfolding the way she'd rehearsed it in her head. He wasn't scrambling, wasn't pleading, wasn't trying to talk his way out. He was studying her, like a man watching a door swing exactly where he expected. She accused him of lying, of planning her death, of wearing kindness like a disguise. Her tears came fast now, messy, uncontrollable. He listened. Then he said something that made her stomach drop. "If you really believe that," he said, "then do it." The room tilted. He stepped forward again, slow, deliberate, closing the space she needed to feel safe. His eyes never left hers. "If I'm the man they told you I am," he continued, "then pull it." Her hands shook so badly the gun rattled. She begged him to stop talking. He didn't. He told her this was the moment, the only honest one left. No more stories from strangers, no more shadows, just her choice. Her finger tightened once. Nothing. The sound wasn't loud, just a dry click, sharp enough to slice the silence in half. Her breath caught. She pulled again, click. Confusion flooded her face before relief could even arrive. He moved, not fast, not violent, just cert. He took the gun from her hand, like removing a lie. Opened it, turned it so she could see. Empty. Her knees gave out. She collapsed onto the floor, sobbing, words tumbling over each other, trying to make sense of something that had already been decided long before tonight. He crouched beside her. "That gun was never meant to fire," he said quietly. "It was meant to test you." Her head snapped up. He told her everything then, not with cruelty, with clarity, about the man who approached her, about who he worked for, about what would have happened if the shot had gone off, how men would have rushed in, how the story would have written itself. He let the truth sit there between them like a body no one wanted to claim. She asked how he knew. He gave her one name, and in that moment she understood something far worse than betrayal. She hadn't been chosen as a victim. She'd been chosen as a weapon. He stood and turned toward the window, the city spread out beneath him, indifferent and endless. When he spoke again, his voice was colder. "You pulled the trigger," he said. "That's the part I can't ignore." She begged, apologized, swore she'd been broken down piece by piece. He believed her. That didn't change the outcome. He told her she'd leave before morning, with money, with her life, with the understanding that this door would never open again. There would be no second option. And somewhere across the city, a man who thought this plan was clever was about to learn what it meant to misjudge someone who never leaves loose ends, because the test wasn't over. It had only proven who failed it. She packed without speaking, not because she had nothing left to say, because words had lost their value. The money sat heavy in her hands, enough to disappear, enough to build a quiet life somewhere nobody asked questions. He didn't watch her pack, didn't rush her, didn't soften the moment. He stayed by the window, eyes on the city already moving past her in his mind. When the door closed behind her, something ended that never made a sound. By dawn, she was gone. A train north, then water, then distance. Exactly the way he'd ordered it. 2 days later, the man with the clean cuffs didn't show up for lunch, or dinner, or the meeting he'd promised someone else he'd attend. A week later, his car was found where cars go when they're meant to be discovered. Locked, quiet, trunk heavier than it should have been. The kind of message nobody needs translated. Knees shattered first, then the explanation. The streets understood immediately. You don't reach through someone's heart to get to their crown, and you don't walk away thinking you've won. But the real conversation happened behind closed doors, a long table, familiar faces, no raised voices, no accusations that couldn't be denied. Just a reminder spoken slowly enough to make everyone uncomfortable. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't demand agreement. He explained consequences. One man smiled. The wrong kind. The kind that says this isn't finished, only postponed. And he was right. Because the next move didn't come with guns or midnight visits. It came with paperwork, testimony, pressure applied where fists couldn't reach. The kind of attack that doesn't leave bruises but still breaks men. When the cuffs finally closed around him, the city pretended to be surprised. From behind walls that don't listen, he understood the lesson too late. You can survive betrayal, you can even forgive it. But once trust shows its limits, the world changes shape. Years passed. A woman lived quietly across the ocean, never danced again, never let anyone close enough to ask why. She carried one night with her longer than any suitcase. Once she reached out, a letter, no excuses, just regret. The response was brief, clean, final, forgiveness given, distance enforced. That was his way. The empty gun never killed him. It showed him something worse. That even love can be turned. That loyalty can be rented. And that the most dangerous weapon in that world isn't steel or lead. It's doubt. Because once doubt enters the room, someone always pulls the trigger.